going to welcome to our show Dr. Shantella Sherman and Jordan Colquitt. Dr. Sherman, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We don't see Jordan. Oh, there he
There
is.
he
Hi,
is.
Jordan.
Hey, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you so much for your contributions to the Washington Informer. And Dr. Sherman, you did, well, you did a health supplement last week, but we're going to talk about back to school and the stories that you covered in this issue. You want to share some of those topics with us?
I'm sure. I always say that back to school is a very important time, and there's always something that parents need to know, students need to know, teachers need to be aware of, and then just the broader community needs to understand. So, under COVID-19, there are a lot of additional issues that include how do you get kids up and get them on a routine when they're already in the house? How do you set your house up so that it's conducive to good learning, as if this the students were in school? For those students who are actually having to go to school, what's the protocol? What are safety measures that parents need to be aware of? What are the teachers concerned about? And then for college students, will they be returning to campus if they have a choice? What are things that they need to be aware of? And we're actually allowing the college students to tell us the things that they are concerned with so that we're more aware of what their needs may be from us as community members or as journalists.
Well, Jordan, I didn't appropriately introduce you, and I want to go back and do that because you're a first-year political science scholar at Towson University, and you graduated from Parkdale High School in Riverdale, Maryland, where you served as both the Parkdale Senior Class President of 2020 and the Black Student Union founding president. And you previously served as the Prince George's County Regional Association of Student Government's Chief of Staff. And now we can add to your resume a contributing writer to the Washington Informer. Boy, you're busy. You are busy. But tell me how this COVID-19 has affected your activities. You've been so active. What's different for you?
Yes, certainly. So initially, the question was, at the end of the school year, how can we keep students engaged? As seniors, we had a lot of activities planned, and we just wanted to keep the class engaged and informed. So that was our task then. But now, our main concern is just how we can stay safe on campus, or whether or not returning to campus is the right thing to do. I'm actually here right now at my dorm at Towson University, so it's interesting. And it's just important to stay safe, wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart. Uh, but I think the most important thing is to do as much as we can safely.
So when Chantel, I think you've also talked about, just that whole mental health aspect. That's what you
Yes.
did in the health supplement. And I'd like for both of you all to really talk about, for you, Jordan, going back to school, making that decision to go back on campus, to stay in the dorm. Of course, who doesn't want to do that? So, it could be a pandemic. I'm going to school, so I got that. But I'm sure that there were some things that you had to deal with, and Chantella, just kind of mixing in that health supplement you did last week and back to school. Can you talk a little bit about what families and students are going through?
Well, I can say right off the bat, a lot of the students left during spring break, and in some instances, they were told they would have their belongings boxed up and sent to them, not to return to campus, just because COVID hit right as spring break was starting. So some students were still trying to get over whether or not they had their belongings. The anxiety of having to leave campus and not return for those who weren't actually going to leave for spring break, and then determining whether or not to meet their families. When we're talking about, this is a pandemic that's hitting all age groups. So there was some concern that I heard from students that said if I left home and went back to the campus and then they closed the campus down, which has happened in many instances now across the country, and then I return home, would I be putting my family members at risk because I've now picked up the virus or some form of something and taking it back home? So there's a lot of anxiety, in addition to the fact that there's anxiety just from leaving home as college students. So the number of students that are dealing with being away from home for the first time, being in shared spaces. Most dorms now have 2 to 3 people in a room. So Jordan, I'm not sure what your situation is, but just that whole situation where instead of you being in a private room, you have a communal space that you're in, as well as communal bathrooms and communal eating spaces. So how does that work, even if you are doing distance learning from your dorm rooms, and you're not in a classroom itself? How do you manage and kind of navigate a pandemic while you're trying to enjoy the college life? So all of those things kind of factor in, and there are no easy and quick answers. We're kind of figuring it out. Universities are as they go.
Right, and I want to ask Jordan, you know, how are you dealing with that?
It was definitely a tough decision to make to return to campus this semester. But ultimately, I just wanted the experience, and the best opportunity. You have to also recognize everyone doesn't work well with distance learning, virtual learning. And I'm one of those people. If I'm sitting behind a computer screen all day, expecting to learn, it's just not going to work out. So, in the dorm room where it's just me, and I'm here with my professor, my class on the Zoom, I can manage that. Another thing that we should consider is that when colleges make the decision to close campus, right, or when it's time to go home, many students do have homes to go to, but there are some students who have nowhere to go. And so they're kind of like in a tricky situation because they ultimately don't really have the choice of, returning to campus and having those safety issues, or, stay home. But what happens if, they don't really have anywhere else to go? And I think it's just important for colleges to make sure that they're doing the best. And it's really on the students as well to make sure that we're making smart decisions that are not only impacting ourselves, but the entire campus community as well.
So you said you don't have a roommate.
Oh, I do.
You do have a roommate.
I
Okay.
do.
All right. And so,
Fortunately, it's someone that I know, and we have a private bathroom, so it's not communal. Um, but I do.
and Dr. Sherman mentioned meals and other, some of the stories I've heard are where the real problems are Greek life organizations, because they are so social and they're not obeying or observing, the social distancing rules. So, I mean, what is your social life like? Or have you just decided you're going to go to college and learn and have no social life? Does that work?
Well, I'm definitely here to learn. I will have a social life, but like I said, it's just on the students to make smart decisions. So having a social life, but I also still have the power to determine where I want to go and when I want to go. So if I see, it's something that maybe I shouldn't go there, of course I'm going to make that decision. But I feel like the social experience, it will be different, as many things are, but it'll be there.
Well, I'm really, really glad to meet you, and I appreciate your support for what we do and your writing. And it seems like to me a social life for you would be a political rally or a political meeting anyway, because you're so active. And Dr. Sherman, I want to thank you so much for putting that issue together, and you do great work with these special editions. And I invite everybody to pick up a copy of the Washington Informer or go to WashingtonInformer.com and read this month's back to school issue. And you'll see Dr. Sherman and Jordan Colquitt both there providing news you can use. Thank you all for joining us.